Hi everyone, we're going to do some readings. All of these readings are from Palestinian youth. They wrote them in 2010. I'm going to start off with a reading from Ali Abu Yassin, and he wrote that on the 5th of November this year, 2023. From Gaza to Shakespeare. Help me, my friend. How can you be present after more than 500 years? You jump before my eyes with every image and every cry. I hear you screaming with the children and sharing the crying with the mothers. Dressed in black like Hamlet's father, emerging from under the rubble, carrying a child's toy. You appear from above the church bells, ringing them, warning of their destruction. Standing above a minaret, when nothing remains of the mosque except it. Trying to help those who fell in a hospital courtyard. You are present everywhere, as if a group of ghosts has split up to force the world to stop the massacres and ethnic cleansing that are happening in Gaza. This is not a war, but something else. When the witches predicted that Birnam Woods would move to King Macbeth's palace, it is as if you are It is as if you are predicting that Gaza City will move to the sea after all this destruction and death. There is not a house or building left that is not destroyed along with its residents. It is as if you predicted that Gaza would move to the sea. But when the forest moved, the soldiers won. Will it be the destroyed buildings laden with cement and iron and the thousands of bodies still under the rubble of children, women, the elderly and the fathers, all those poor souls that will inevitably be swept into the sea after the end of the war, as is the custom of all buildings after every war. But the difference this time is that the buildings are mixed with the flesh and blood and will be baptized by the sea, as if the price of our freedom, which we struggled for more than 70 years, was this baptism towards freedom. I do not know why the saying of the occupation Prime Minister Rabin comes back to mind. How I wish I would wake up to find Gaza swallowed by the sea. Was everything that happened planned? Did you, Shakespeare, know that the price of freedom is the movement of cities and forests, and that still water is stagnant water? Yes, if this is the price of our freedom and dignity, we will pay it with appreciation, respect, and a desire to go towards the sun. Was aviation included in this moment as well? The body of my friend, Majed, flew 100 meters into the air, and his body ended up on the balcony of an apartment, torn apart by a missile that killed him, together with 120 members of his family. The war was not a Midsummer Night's Dream, but rather a terrifying, weeping nightmare. The main players of the show were some clowns, including aeroplanes, tanks, and battleships, throwing lava at children. How could you, William Shakespeare, write us in Romeo and Juliet and warn us of the ugliness of conflict and war between cousins, and that everyone will pay the price? The vision has changed, my friend. It has become more the sound of rockets. The sound of rockets makes the heart jump in fear. The smell of gunpowder and carcinogenic smoke forcibly penetrates the lungs. Phosphorus bombs, which are banned internationally, burn the green and dry land. Seeing your loved ones in pieces, your heart that is torn 1,000 times every day as if it were a piece of rubber. Get up, Shakespeare. Help me, my friend. I'm really tired. Resist with your wise pen, full of love, joy, revolution, humanity, hope, and freedom openly. Maybe we will all become brothers under that blue sky.
Mohammed Qassem, born 1995, age 15, from Al Saftawi Street. My grandmother and I were home alone. She was telling me stories about the days of our country, funny stories and sad ones. But she never told me a complete story because she always had to go to the bathroom halfway through. My grandma spends half her time in the room and the other half in the bathroom. My parents came back at 10:30 at night and went to sleep straight away. I couldn't sleep. I was lying on my bed awake, writing my homework, and suddenly I heard the noise of a distant explosion. I went to my parents' room and took the radio to hear the news. I woke my father up and told him I heard the sound of a strong explosion. He said, "Be quiet and go back to bed. It's just aimless shooting." Anyway, I went back to bed and the electricity was out. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion that shook my world. I pulled my blanket and covered my face, and something fell on me. I raised the blanket off of me with all the strength, and it was the frame of the window that had fell on me. The blanket was full of glass, and our entire house was full of black smoke. It was the day they hit the workers' union right beside our house. But that's not the point. The point is the stupid things that happened and which I can't find an explanation for. First, the world is on fire, and we all felt we were going to die, but my grandmother was looking for her false teeth. She was afraid that when she died, people would find out that she had no teeth, like they didn't know already. Second, the house was full of smoke, but my father lit a cigarette and smoked, as if we needed more smoke. Third, my uncle called to make sure we were okay, and my father told him that we're all fine, thank God, but that all the windows of the house were broken except one. My uncle told him to break it, so my father did. And I don't know why I'm telling this story. All I know is that we're living in a cage, a prison, like an encaged bird who wants to come out but he's besieged. Kids are dying in front of their mother's eyes. Hearts are crying for them, screaming in the loudest voice. But no one hears. No one's heart softens. And no one seems to care.
Sajud Abu Hassanen, born 1995, 15 years old, in Ashtar Theatre. What I love most in Gaza is people's kindness and simplicity. And what I hate most is the political party fanaticism. I feel that there's a contradiction between all this love and kindness that people have and this evil that controls the surface. If it was in my hands, I'd solve the problem of the Palestinian division tomorrow. In the war, they assassinated a big Hamas leader. All the media in the world covered the incident, but The whole world was in one valley and we were in the other. Because Modi and Saluma, my young brothers, and my dad had gone to our land that's next to the Hamas leader. We called them 1,000 times. And as usual, the Jawal mobile landlines wouldn't go through, which stressed us out even more. Mum started pacing the balcony like a small bird from whom they'd taken her children. She imagined that the balcony would somehow rescue Modi and Saluma and Dad. I was really stressed. I started crying and I went down to my aunt. My aunt started soothing me. She lied to me and told me that she had called them and spoken to them. I knew that she had not talked to them, but she was holding me and crying, and I was crying too. When I went up to our house, I saw that Mum was still pacing the balcony. I forgot to tell you at the time that Modi and Saluma are 5 and 7 years old. They used to sleep in my arms and my soul was connected to them. I felt at the time that my soul was going to escape and die. And honestly, only then I felt there was a war in Gaza. Because I was busy with the computer all the time, and that day was the first time I lived the war. An hour later, there was knocking on the door of our house, and Dad came back with Modi and Saluma. As much as I loved them, this was the first time I felt how much they were really dear to me, how much I couldn't bear to be apart from them. I put them on my lap and kissed them like it was the first time I'd held them, and Mum stopped pacing the balcony. And it was the first time I felt that she loved Dad like this. After the war, I started thinking, why are we like that? Out of the whole world, they took our land and threw us out of our homes. And because we are defending ourselves, all this happens to us. There's no water, no electricity, no phones, no petrol. What are we to the world? Aren't we human?
Hannah Keeley, born in 1995, 15 years old, Al Yarmouk Street. We were sitting at home a day before the war erupted, at 10:30 at night. My father, mother, brothers and myself, flicking through the TV channels, news, art, sports, nonsense, common sense. Then the phone rang. I answered. Yes, Lana, yes. Tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning, we'll go to school together. Okay, dearest, I'll wait for you. And she came indeed at 6:30 in the morning. All the way we were arguing who studied more. Anyway, we got to school and went into the exam and then went home. When Lana laughed, the whole world laughed with her. I felt she was the person who loved me the most in the world. Once I forgot to do my maths homework. She took my exercise book and I took hers, and she was punished instead of me. While going home from school, we heard the sound of planes, followed by an explosion. I was very scared. Lana came close to me, held my hand, looked at me, and told me, smiling, Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Death can't part us. When she was talking to me, suddenly the street was filled with smoke and with sounds of rockets and explosions, one after the other. She held me tight. A moment later, she fell from my hands and the smoke faded. I looked at my shirt and it was full of blood. I thought I was injured. I started screaming. I looked at the ground and saw Lana down on it, looking at me, laughing and crying at the same time. I held her hand and she told me, "Don't be scared. Death can't part us." And her hand slipped from mine. People gathered around us and suddenly the ambulance came wanting to take her from my arms. I fell on her and held her and the paramedic said, "That's it. Leave her. God have mercy on her soul." I started screaming and fainted. I woke up in hospital without Lana, and this was the first time she wasn't with me. Many times in the night when I'm sitting, I wish the phone would ring and I'd hear Lana's voice again telling me, "We'll meet at 6:30.
علي الحسني، مواليد 95، عمره 15 سنة، سكان شارع السفطاوي. أكثر شيء بحبه في غزة إنها مش زي الدول الثانية. الدول الثانية عندهم مشاكل كثيرة، مجاعات وحصار وانقسام واحتلال وقصف وتدمير وموت. أما إحنا ما عندنا أي شيء من هذا. عشان هيك بحب غزة كتير، وخصوصاً إنه المجاري والشوارع نظيفة والناس بيحبوا بعض والأسعار رخيصة وكل الناس سعيدة والسمك صحي بسبحش بالمجاري. وأنا مش راح أموت من الجوع والفقر أو الجلطة من الجلطات اللي ماتوا فيها نص أقاربي من كثر السعادة. بدي أحكي لكم سر خطير كاتم عليه في صدري من أول ما بديت كلامي، متردد أقوله. السر هو إنه أنا يا جماعة الخير سبب الحرب في غزة. يمكن تستغربوا ليش؟ لأنه أنا عمري ما حلمت حلم إلا وتحقق. قبل الحرب بليلة حلمت إنه قامت الحرب ودارنا انقصفت وما حدا ضل فيها طيب إلا أنا. ثاني يوم الساعة 11:25 دقيقة بدأت الضربات الجوية على غزة. أول صدمة صابتني في الحرب إنه أجمد أستاذ في المدرسة، أستاذ الرياضيات، من أول ثانية نزل تحت الطاولة من الخوف. أنا فكرت إذا أجمد أستاذ تخبى تحت الطاولة إحنا إيش نساوي؟ كثير أولاد شخوا على حالهم. أنا بدأت أصيح والأولاد كلهم بيصيحوا. أنا كنت أصيح على بيتنا اللي متأكد إنه تدمر، وعلى أهلي اللي متأكد إنهم استشهدوا. طلعت أجري في الشارع بدي ألحق أهلي، بس ضليت ساعتين أستنى سيارة تأخذني، وبالآخر رحت مشي طول الطريق وأنا متخيل إنه بيتنا متدمر وأهلي ميتين. وصلت البيت لقيت فيش فيه شيء، وأهلي قاعدين بفكوا الشبابيك عشان ما تتكسر من ضغط الهواء. بس اليوم أنا خايف يقصفوا بيتنا. عشان هيك وبتقدروا تسألوا أمي أنا بنام وتحتي 3 فرشات عشان لما يصير القصف الفرشات تتلقى الضربات وما يصير فيها إشي. وصرت أكره أحلم، بس الحلم مش بإيدنا. أظن إنه علي قبل الحرب اللي هو أنا غير عن علي بعد الحرب. إنسان جديد بحاول أتعرف عليه. قبل الحرب ما كنت أفهم السياسة أبدا، ولا كنت أعرف رئيس الدولة من رئيس الوزراء. عمري ما سمعت أخبار. بس اليوم صرت محلل سياسي. الجزيرة هذا الصباح، ومنتصف النهار، وهذا المساء، وحصاد اليوم، وحصاد الأسبوع. كل هذه البرامج صرت أتابعها وناقش فيها. صرت أحس إنه السياسة والأخبار مهمة كتير بحياتنا، لأنها هي اللي بتموتنا وهي اللي بتحيينا. ولأنه كمان بدي أكون أول واحد بيعرف إذا راح تصير كمان حرب ولا لا. Ali Al-Hassani, born 1995, 15 years old, Al-Saftawi Street. The thing I love most about Gaza is that it's not like the other countries. Other countries have lots of problems: famine, siege, division, occupation, bombing, destruction, and death. But we have none of these issues. That's why I love Gaza a lot, especially that the sewage in the streets are clean and people love one another. Prices are cheap, everyone's happy, and the fish are healthy and don't swim in sewage. And that I will not die of hunger, poverty, or a heart attack that half of my relatives died from because of so much happiness. I want to tell you a big secret that I'm holding in my chest and that I've been itching to say since I started speaking. The secret is, I, my dear folks, am the reason for the war in Gaza. You might be surprised as to why. Because I never had a dream that didn't come true. One night before the war, I dreamed that the war started and our house was bombed, and I was the only survivor. The next day at 11:25 in the morning, the airstrikes began on Gaza. The first shock I got in the war was when the strongest teacher in school, the math teacher, hid under his desk in fear from the first second. I thought, if the strongest teacher hides under the desk, what do we do? A lot of kids peed themselves. I started screaming, and everyone started screaming with me. I was screaming for our house that I was sure was destroyed, and for my family that I was sure was martyred. I went out running in the street, wanting to rush home to my family. But I walked for 2 hours, waiting for a car to take me. In the end, I went home walking. All the way, I was imagining our house destroyed and my family dead. I got home and found nothing was the matter. My family were taking down the windows so they wouldn't break from air pressure. But till today, I'm scared that they will blow our house up. That's why, and you can ask my mother, I sleep with 3 mattresses underneath me, so that when there's bombing, the mattresses will absorb the hits, and nothing will happen to me. I hate dreaming, but dreams are not in our control. I think that Ali, that's me, before the war, is different from Ali after the war, who is a new person that I'm trying to discover. Before the war, I didn't understand anything about politics. I didn't know the head of state from the prime minister. I never listened to news, but today I became a political analyst. Al Jazeera this morning, midday, this evening, harvest of the day, harvest of the week. I started following all of these programs and discussing them. I started feeling that politics and news are very important because they are what kills us and what gives us life. And also because I want to be the first to know if there's going to be another war.
Reem Afana, born 1996, 14 years old, Al-Safdawi Street. When I was young, I used to feel that I was the happiest child in the world. But the more I grow and the more my mind grows, the more my worries grow. Because I start to understand things that I did not. I started to know the meaning of a deprived child. The thing that upsets me and makes me cry the most are children's tears. And all children in the world, regardless of their nationality, religion, or colour. When I grow up, I want to be a paediatrician. And that's the hope that gives me the big push in life. Even though I'm fed up, bored, and sad. Because Gaza doesn't have life anymore. Yesterday I was sitting in school and heard the sound of planes. I got really scared, and I wanted to run away from school. I felt that I was going to die because I remembered the war. The sounds of war won't leave my mind. On the third day of the war, my family was sitting together, talking about what was happening in the war, and my grandmother was reassuring us, so we wouldn't be scared. We were actually calmed. Even though the sounds of rockets didn't stop, but my grandmother's voice was calming us. And the phone rang. The lines never caught in the war, so when we heard the sound of the phone, we were happy. Hello? Yes? This is the Israeli Defense Army. You have 5 minutes to clear the house. It's for your own benefit. You have been warned. I couldn't feel my legs anymore. Everyone in the house started yelling. My grandmother was the first to run away. I had never seen her move so fast in my life. My dad held me and my sisters and told us not to be scared. He was pulling me to leave, but I was going to die if I didn't take my teddy bear with me. I felt I would betray him if I left him under the bombing. I escaped from my dad's hands and ran to my bear, took him in my arms, and left. We all got away from the house and sat down to wait for 5 minutes. They were the longest 5 minutes in history. They became 10. We felt like there were years that passed. I was in a whirlwind. Thoughts and dreams were thrashing about in my head, and the world was spinning. And I felt like the dream of being a doctor was very, very far away. I held the bear and remembered myself when I was small. How I was always laughing. I want to go back to being small. I want to stay small. I don't want to grow up. But the only thing that comforted me was the love of people who didn't leave us for one moment. There is so much love in Gaza.
Wi'am El Diari, born 1997, 13 years old, is Sabra. What I love most in Gaza is Barcelona Park. I used to go there 3 times a week. I would spend the whole day on the swings, laughing and playing with my friends. But during the war, the occupation bulldozed it and destroyed it. I went to visit the place and started crying. I remembered where I used to play and where the swings were, and my laughter with my friends. I want to be a lawyer so I can defend the people that have been victimised. And you won't find more of them than in the empire of Gaza, because I feel that Gaza is 100 countries and 1.5 million presidents. The tanks got to our house at 5 a.m. Mum started gathering things from the house, and everything turned upside down in a few seconds. Everyone started yelling and carrying what they could, and we went out running in the streets, not knowing where to go. My grandmother said, "You can only go to the schools." And old schools. Our school is more beautiful than all schools. 100 of us used to sleep in one class. From the first night, I got into a fight with another girl about 1/4 meter and who was going to sleep in it. And I don't know how we slept on top of each other, like a mountain of old, discarded, forgotten clothes. 3 days later, we went back to the house and the neighbourhood, but a lot of things had changed. The neighbourhood wasn't the same, and the people weren't the same either. The biggest change in me is that I became a gossip. Honestly, I can't hold my tongue. Our theatre trainer told me that this is normal in Gaza. All Gaza gossips about each other. But the difference between me and the people in Gaza is that they don't admit that they're gossiping, while I admit in my full mental capacities that I am a gossip. Sometimes I find no one to gossip about, so I gossip about myself.
Tamer Nejm, born 1993, 17 years old, as Sheikh Radwan. Gaza is a matchbox, and we're the matches inside it. When the war started on Gaza, all the media was focused on us. Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, and all the satellite channels were focused on Gaza, and the occupation wouldn't leave us alone. The whole world became busy with Gaza and what's happening inside it. Suddenly, Al Jazeera wrote, "Breaking news, death of Muhammad al-Hindi." And it wasn't normal because that Muhammad, he's my uncle, my mother's brother. It was the first time I see the screaming move from live broadcast on TV to the house. Screaming and yelling and tears, all of it mixed up together, and it moved from our house to the street, and my mum fainted. A while later, the phone rang. It was my second uncle calling to tell us that Muhammad was martyred. He didn't know that the whole world knew the news. This television is awful. Before a person is shot, as the bullet is on its way to his chest, the television has already broadcast the news. But these days, all the channels are sitting idle, praying to God to send another war on Gaza so they have work. Anyway, we all started crying bitterly for my uncle and remembering him and talking about him. We kept talking about him for a long time. Then it started getting less because death became normal in Gaza. After the war, I stopped caring whether I live or die. After what we saw in the war, I don't care about anything. Because I think each day I live is the biggest bonus. And all the life I live after the war is extra because I could have died at any second. You know, I'm sick of the city even though I love it. And I'm sick of the people too. Sometimes I feel that I know the 1.5 million who live in Gaza. There's nothing new. The same day is repeated every day. I feel like traveling, like changing scene and faces. As soon as I wake up every morning, I see the electricity pole in my face. I wish I'd wake up one day and not find it there. Each day, Abu Ibrahim stands at the door of the supermarket and Abed, the bean seller, is selling his beans, and Abu al-Abed is sitting at the door of his house, afraid that his house would run away. Ibrahim is standing with Hassan. I know the taxi drivers one by one. I know who takes you to the city and who goes to the beach. It's soul draining. The only hour that's different in my life is the one when I come to theatre practice. It became my work and mission. I wait for it impatiently. Without the theatre, I would have gone crazy. When I grow up, I want to be a big actor. I've loved acting since I was a kid. But any institution that I used to go to when I was a kid threw me out a few days later. But this time, it's different.
Ahmad Taha, born 96, 14 years old, Al-Duraj. All my life I thought Gaza was the biggest and most beautiful city in the world. But once I went with my dad to Jaffa and came back with my head spinning. After that, I felt that Gaza was the size of a needle hole and wasn't beautiful. And it keeps getting smaller and worse. No one can breathe. And on top of it all, we're not allowed to travel. Every time I walk the streets of Gaza, I suffocate. Jaffa's picture won't leave my mind. I ask myself, where are we? We're so far from the rest of the world. That's why I'm always at sea. Because I feel it's not from Gaza. I keep writing my name on the sand, and the waves come and erase it. Before the war, I wanted to be an electronics engineer. But since the war, I hate going to school. I feel I won't be anything important in my life. And even if I will, so what? It's all the same in this city. Am I going to be the prettiest flower on a garbage heap? When the bombing began, all the schools in Gaza went home, except us. The principal wouldn't let us leave. The kids freaked out, and in a second, they went out into the schoolyard. The weird thing is that I'm in the Zaytuna school, the one near the Ministry of Passports, which got hit first. With the first hit, a piece of a rocket flew onto the biggest tree in the school and sliced it in two like a sugarcane. As soon as we saw that, no one stayed in school. students, teachers, or the principal. We fled for our lives. I thought the only martyr that I would see in the war is the tree. But as soon as I got home, there were 4 martyrs in our street, as though waiting for me to say goodbye to them. When I'm done with that, 3 more martyrs from the same family in our street arrived. As soon as we buried them and returned, our neighbor's house, 2 houses down the street, was bombed by the army and the house was wiped off the ground. Everyone died. I felt most sad for the little girls. I felt the war was targeting me alone out of all the people in Gaza. All day, I'd be seeing martyrs. In the Shifa hospital, I saw a sight that I will never forget. Hundreds of corpses, one on top of the other. Their flesh, their blood, and their bones all melting on each other. You wouldn't know the woman from the man or even the child. Piles of flesh on the beds and loads of people screaming and crying, not knowing where their kids are, their men, or their women. That night, I came home from hospital and was awake till morning from fear. I thought that it would only be that night that I couldn't sleep. But till today, I see them in front of me and I can't sleep.
Fatima Abu Hashem, born 1996, age 14, Al Jalat Street. When I talk to Palestinian kids in Europe, I feel sorry for them. And I don't wish to be like them because they're in diaspora. They plant their dreams in a land that's not theirs. Dreams grow with the people and the country. I love life, love to play, and love people. I wish I could be the president of Palestine for one day so I can enrich love and peace between people, end the hatred and spite in their hearts, and end the internal division. This would be my first presidential decision, but unfortunately I'm not the president, and that's why there was a war. The war opened up with bombing like rain. We came running out of school in fear and found the whole world running in the streets. People were looking for their sons and sisters and mothers. Everyone was running with their heads raised to the sky. Honestly, they looked strange. I saw one of them from a distance wearing pajamas, barefoot and running. And when I first saw her, I didn't recognize her. But when I got close to her, wow, that's my uncle's wife. The chic one who doesn't leave the house without looking top notch. Then I was sure the war had started. It's been more than a year since we've been talking about the war. We lived it and continue to live it each day in detail, because the TV, the phone and the doorbell are all things that remind me of the war, and I don't like them. You know, I even threw away my mobile. And I'm most scared of being alone. I think, what would I do if a war starts and I'm alone? Who will protect me? And when I'm with the family, I start to think, how would I protect them? I had a big dream to become an actress. But this dream started shrinking slowly because people in my country don't look at an actress in a positive way. Even though acting is important and allows me to relay the picture of suffering of my country and society to the world. I have a second dream, if the first doesn't work out, to be a journalist. And the third dream is to make a family that I love and who love me. The fourth is for us to be free and for the flag of Palestine to fly freely. And the fifth is to see people happy without death, destruction, deprivation or war. And the sixth and last is for me to finish this monologue and come down from the stage.
Mahmoud Abu Shaban, born 1996, Al Ramal, age 14. You're gonna call me crazy, nuts, cuckoo, go ahead. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me anymore. In truth, what's happening with me is not normal. I mean, losing trust in my friends is normal. Lots of people have lost trust in others. But what's driving me crazy is that I've lost my trust in shop windows and cars, police stations and suspicious areas. In my personal philosophy, all of Gaza is a suspicious area. To make a long story short, everything that was hit in the war, I'm scared of going there today. I don't know how to walk down the street. I'd be walking on the right side and get scared. And then across to the left side, but I'd be scared there too. So I'd go back to the right and stay in that whirlwind. Where am I supposed to walk? In the middle of the street? On the first day of the war, I was in my brother's shop that sells computer parts and small phone accessories. A medal fell on the floor, and my brother told me to hang it up. Suddenly, while hanging it up, I heard the sound of rockets, and the glass fell on me and injured me. I was scared. I wasn't scared for myself, but for my brother. He was injured too. He was worried about our family. He told me, go up to the house, make sure they're okay. I went up the stairs, and I wasn't scared. I made sure they were all right. And they were fine, thank God. I walked up the street to find out where the explosion had happened. We had a lot of explosions. Gaza became like a black night because of all the smoke. But I still wasn't scared. I forgot to tell you, when my brother had a cup of tea in the first explosion, which fell from his hand and broke. Do you think that was because of fear?
Yasmin Jaru, born 1996, 14 years old, Al-Daraj. Our future in Gaza is obscure and unknown, like a calm volcano that can erupt at any second. As if we're on a boat without a captain in the midst of a raging sea, we go right and left, no one knows where to lean. I hear that in other countries, childhood is sacred, and children live their lives without problems and fear. But Gaza's children are forgotten and outside the picture. They're the ones who feel the injustice the most, because society treats them as if they're not kids. When it wants, it makes them adults, and then when it wants, it returns them to being children. And most people deal with them as if they're only bodies, not minds. When I see a child peddling in the street or working in a shop, I imagine the children of the world who are playing and resting and feeling safe. Honestly, it breaks my heart for them sometimes. I cry. Gaza has no tenderness, no childhood. A boy is born a man here and a girl a bride. Dad, before the war, was a lot more tender with me. I wish he would take me in his arms like before, but God help him, he's probably worried too. Because in the war, we lost 5 dunhams of land in a second. The field that is 60 years old was hit by a rocket from the Israeli army, which burned all the oranges in it. My father, my brother, and myself could have also died by that rocket because we were so close to the window. If Dad hadn't thrown me on the ground, all the shrapnel would have hit me. After the war, I visited Rafah Crossing and I saw the flags of Palestine and Egypt next to each other, yet separated by a wire. I felt the difference between the 2 flags and that this wire is the border of this big prison that we live in. I felt how stupid and unjust is the world. I felt like breaking all the borders and ending the differences between races and religions so that everyone in this world will be brothers. My dream became to live in a safe country, even in a small village, in a distant island at the end of the world.
Fatima Atala, born in 1996, as Sheikh Radwan. Gaza's fish ran away, but people were not able to. They opened the sewerage into the sea, and if the sea could talk, it would tell them, "Shame on you for what you are doing to Gaza and me." Instead of music and acting schools, Gaza became a school for shooting and murder. I'm very scared by nature. I'm scared of cockroaches and birds, and I worry day and night. The first day of the war, all the girls went home except me. I was the last one to leave school. I was sitting there shaking, couldn't stand on my legs. Finally, I felt that if I don't help myself, no one would. I gathered my courage and stood up shaking and walked like a tree, all of me trembling. People were walking near me, but nobody felt me. The sounds of rockets got louder, and the horror in my heart grew deeper. Usually, the distance from my school to my house is half an hour, but that day I got home in 15 minutes. It was because of my fear. It was time I was the most scared in my life. Every second I thought I was going to die. It was the first time I feel this terrible loneliness, even though the streets were full of people. I got home and stood at the window. A rocket fell near our house and I flew off the ground and landed on my back. For the whole war, I couldn't stand by a window. I started sleeping in an inner room that doesn't have a single window. I think I'm still scared to this day, but I pretend not to be.